Coming into this season, we had heard so much about Shane Steichan and so many people talking about how he's just about football. He's all about football. He's a football savant. He's a football genius, right? Genius on the offensive side of the ball. And what we've seen over the first 2 weeks, right? New coach, new system, some new players, including a new quarterback, which is the most important position on the field, and a very inexperienced quarterback. The offense looks pretty good, pretty functional, right? The first week could have certainly been better. There were miscues. They could have been better, right? Penalties are going to have to get better as we go along. In the first game, the Colts as a team had 4 penalties for 35 yards. And in the game against the Texans, they had 8 penalties for 42 yards. And a lot of the penalties for this team have been on the offensive side of the ball. So those things have to get cleaned up. Now, the penalties are also happening on the offensive line, which is the area that we knew was going to need some help coming into the season. So they're going to have to figure things out on the penalty side. Like, penalties are drive killers. You'll hear so many coaches talk about it. Penalties will kill drives, or essentially turnovers in a lot of cases, especially holding calls on the offensive side of the ball. So going forward, those are going to have to be cleaned up, and that comes down to coaching, right? The players have to execute it, but you have to coach your guys, and you have to be able to discipline your guys. You're almost like a parent in that sense, right? Or you're their boss. You have to get your employees to do their job correctly, whatever that entails. Whatever you have to do, you have to figure out the penalties, right? The great coaches always have teams that have a very low amount of penalties. Okay, so that's step one that needs to get cleaned up, and that'll get cleaned up. You expect that to get cleaned up with head coach, right? Shane Steichen has done very well. You look in the first game, 3 of 12 on third down, 1 of 3 on fourth down. Then you look at the Texans game, we're 6 for 12 on third down. And a lot of those conversions that we didn't get happened in the second half when the Colts were, more trying to run clock. They weren't really trying to push the ball downfield to score. They were trying to kill clock in that second half, right? Came out in the second half up 28-10 already. They were trying to melt the time off the clock. And we saw that when they got in that mode, they weren't able to really do that, right? So they're going to have to clean that up. When the defense knows what we're going to do, you have to be able to execute. And it's the NFL. You're not going to be able to do that every time, but when it comes down to it, if they know you're going to run the ball, or they know that you're just trying to complete passes to keep the clock going, you're trying to keep the ball in bounds, short completions, right? When the defense is starting to scheme up to stop you from doing that, and you have to be able to execute it. That's what great teams are able to do, right? That's how you win playoff games, is being able to execute in those situations. So we got to be able to figure that out. What happened in the second half? You want to see the offense be able to put it together. Now, luckily, the defense was able to make corrections. There was one drive, the Texans were running more tempo, but even still ran a 17-play drive. And that 17-play drive should take like 10 minutes off the clock. They took, I think it was 7 minutes, 48 seconds, I believe it was, off the clock, which was a great job by the defense, right? If you were in the live stream, we were talking about in the live stream during the game, like, this is a time, like I mentioned, we need this drive to take time because the offense can't take time off the clock. And that's exactly what the defense did. They were able to keep things in front of them. So great job by Gus Bradley and his group. But we need to see the same thing happen from Shane Steichen and his group. When it's time to make those plays, we need to be able to execute those plays. So for the most part, really good job on third down against the Texans, but seeing improvement in that regard is good going into the second game, right? We're still very early on. This is a very early evaluation, not a whole lot to go off of here. But what I really wanted to talk about, and I'm going to share my screen with you guys here so that you can see the same thing that I'm seeing. I want to go through this decision. There was one decision in the Texans game that really we would have never saw this happen with Frank Reich as coach. I don't want to do a whole, bury one guy to put one guy over. This is new. This wasn't happening under Frank. So I want to see this decision, something that made a huge impact in the game yesterday. All right, so here we are. The Colts at this point had gotten the ball. We're in the fourth quarter. 6.5 minutes left, 4th and 1. We've seen the Colts go for this, right? We went for it 3 times just a week ago. So what this shot is right here, this is Gardner Minshew in the offense is about to go off the field. They were on the field for 4th and 1, right? The play clock starts at 40. They've been on the field for 6 seconds. Now they are turning to go off the field. Okay, so these guys going off. And then here you see that the punt team on the field. All right, and at this point, the punt team's on the field. Now we have the punt team running off the field, offense coming on the field real quick. Okay, so keep that rolling. Offense coming on, offense coming on. All right, so now you see here, at this point right here, they have to let the defense get substitutions since the offense came back onto the field, right? There were substitutions. They have to let them substitute, which is why the ref is sitting right here talking to Gardner. You know, he's just kind of up, waiting for everything to get set, waiting for substitutions to be made. And at this point, there's about 4, 5, 6 seconds on the clock at this point, right? And then as we go forward here, they have to take a timeout. You see first timeout down here, and you see staying. This whole thing was planned out. Shane Steichan, Coach Steichan here, knows that he got him to take that timeout, a crucial moment, right? Texans were only down 11 points at this point. They were starting to build a little bit of momentum, and Shane Steichan changed things up enough that they had to call a timeout. They had to burn a timeout. He gives a thumbs up to the offense. Great job to sell that they might run something there. Great job getting back on the field. Gardner Minshew also knows this is exactly what we planned for. He's pumped that they were able to execute that. Okay, and it's decisions like that from coach that are going to separate him, right? The things that make him great, right? When you talk about football minds, that's manipulating your opponent right there, right? You know that they're going to have to burn that timeout so that they don't give up a 4th and 1, right? What if the Colts do run a 4th and 1 real quick, right? But they're not set enough. They didn't have the exact personnel they wanted in the game in that moment. They make them burn a timeout, especially because DeMeco Ryans, also brand new head coach in his second game. He's a defensive guy, right? He's responsible for a lot of the defensive calls on the Texan side of things. So it was a great job here by Shane Steichan. I'd like to see more stuff like this, right? These decisions that coach is going to make. What is he going to do going forwards? But it's exciting to know that you can depend on him to make good decisions as a head coach, right? There were questionable decisions. I think we can all admit over the last couple of years, questionable decisions by Coach Reich over the years, and Coach Steichan gonna have some questionable calls over the years. That's just the way it's gonna be, right? Going forward on 4th down so many times last week, you could debate we shouldn't have been that aggressive that many times, right? Leaving points on the field. So we'll see what happens going forward. But so far, I'm very excited about what I've seen from him just as a head coach, right? He's also the offensive play caller. And Anthony Richardson, for all the criticism that there was about Anthony Richardson, in basically just 5 quarters of play, Anthony Richardson has 3 rushing touchdowns and a passing touchdown. Okay, he's completing like 67% of his passes or something like that, maybe higher than that. Has about 275 yards, somewhere around there. Like, Anthony Richardson has played great. This offense looked very good in week 2 compared to week 1, right? Week 1, the offense puts up 14. Week 2, the offense is responsible for 31. Vast improvement. We have a tough opponent coming up against the Ravens. And we'll see. You know, John Harbaugh, also a very good coach. This isn't going to be an easy game. We'll see what Coach Steichan can do in this upcoming game. But again, very excited for what we have in Coach, and very excited for what we're seeing from this team coming together from week 1 to week 2 and what we can do in week 3. So we're going to continue to put out more videos. I plan to do film study about the offensive line. I really want to break down that offensive line this week, player by player. So make sure you're subscribed with notifications on so you're notified of all those videos and all the different videos, any Colts news that happens. Make sure to come on back for it. And until next time, as always, take care of yourself, take care of each other, and go Colts.